In recent years, attention around people vanishing on cruise ships has been growing, thanks to in part like documentaries like the one that we just saw on Netflix based on the haunting disappearance of Amy Bradley. These cases pull the curtain back on a lot of interesting information that vacationers don't really know, and sometimes they don't really want to talk about because they are living in a little blissful world when they go onto these cruises. But in reality, these cruises can be very dangerous and sometimes even lawless. I will say though that I have not been on a cruise, and it's mostly due to the fact that a lot of people do disappear. Being into true crime, I do dig into cases that people don't necessarily know about. I find myself to be a little bit more hyper aware of my circumstances and the possibilities that could happen. So for that reason, I have been super weary about going on a cruise. It just seems too risky based on what you're getting in return. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. I have searched through several different cases and I have picked a handful of them that we're going to go over. And I definitely think these cases need their fair share of attention as well, whether they were accidents, foul play was involved, or whether it's still an ongoing investigation. They definitely do deserve their fair share of attention. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and this is Heebie-Jeebies TV, and this is where true crime meets the other side. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about a few cruise disappearances. Now, the thing about cruises is that they are marketed as floating paradises, but the truth is much darker than that. Once you're out at sea, you're in a jurisdictional gray zone, also known as international waters, where crimes are often mishandled. Cruise lines are not always necessarily mandated to report what's going on. Passengers are not vetted, so you have no idea who is getting on this cruise ship with you, and accountability is quite scarce. And in this shadowy environment is the perfect environment for people to disappear. Some are never seen again, and families are left without answers, and investigations, if they happen at all, are often botched or quickly brushed aside. Every year, dozens of passengers vanish from cruise ships. They step on board full of excitement, and then without warning, they are simply gone. A great example is what happened to Amy Bradley, and I don't think anyone in her family was expecting to come back home with one less family member, especially when you consider that this cruise had been won by her father via the company that he was working at the time. The family was super excited. They were all eager to go on here, and originally the cruise was just for 2 people, but because they wanted to make it a family trip, they decided to add on 2 more tickets, which was for Amy and her brother. Tragically, they and many other loved ones are forced to live with the torment of not knowing if their family member was the victim of an accident, foul play, or something even more sinister. And so with that, this episode is dedicated to those that have gone missing at sea, their families still waiting and still hoping that one day they'll at least learn what really happened. Because behind every missing passenger headline is a family living in an endless nightmare and a mystery that deserves far more answers than it has been given. Alright, so the first story we're going to discuss is a young woman named Ariel Marion. Now, it was September 16th, 2012 when 21-year-old Marion and her mother, Vera, boarded a 7-day Royal Caribbean cruise. Both women were super excited because neither of them had ever been on a cruise before. So it was obviously going to be their very first cruise, but what they didn't know is that it was also going to be their last. Her mother recounts what happened that day. The 2 of them boarded the cruise and they were set to share a cabin with a balcony on deck 11. They were also part of a much larger tour group, which was approximately 600 people. Now, almost right away, Ariel's mother noticed that her daughter was getting quite a lot of attention from several employees on the cruise ship. Some of them had even asked her to meet up later, but her daughter declined. This had all happened at the reception, which I guess was some sort of welcoming reception, like an introductory meeting for passengers. This meeting concluded at approximately 6:30 p.m., and from there, the two women decided to go back to their cabin. Around 8 p.m., Ariel had told her mother that she was going to head up to the pool for a quick swim before their dinner reservation, which was set for 8:30 p.m. Now, this dinner reservation was also going to be had with many other members from their tour group. Her mother was totally fine with this. She had no problem. After all, Ariel was 21, she was an adult, and she figured that she would be right back. I mean, what could go wrong in that 30-minute span? Ariel's mother said goodbye to her daughter, and she decided to take a quick nap before their dinner. At 8:30, she woke up, quickly got ready, and headed down to where everyone was having dinner. She didn't see her daughter, and although she didn't panic right away, she figured that she was maybe running late and that she would be down any moment. However, in the middle of her meal, she was interrupted by 3 cruise ship security guards asking to speak with her urgently. They then took her to a secluded area of the ship and asked her if her daughter was able to swim. Now, immediately, a million thoughts were going through Vera's head. I mean, how else do you think that she would react if people that she doesn't know, complete strangers, randomly come up to her and ask her if her daughter knows how to swim? That could only imply one thing, that her daughter must be in the water. But the security guards were not giving her any information. But at this point, that's when she realized that something awful must have happened to Ariel. Cruise ship security then asked her to write out a statement, but she declined to do this. After all, she still had no idea what was going on. One of the security guards then decided to take it upon himself to write out a statement for her and then insisted that she sign it. They then finally told her what they believed happened to her daughter. They said that they believed that Ariel had gone overboard. A little earlier in the evening, one of the people that was part of this tour had called the 911 line on the cruise ship, and this was because they were reporting that someone or something had fallen from up above, and that on their way down, whatever this thing was, or if it was a person, had brushed upon their arm. Then at approximately 10:30 p.m., a security officer was reviewing the video footage that they had available to them, and they were able to confirm that a woman was going overboard. Obviously, like any mother, Vera was completely hysterical. She had 1,000,001 questions, but again, nobody was giving her any answers. And she became so frantic at this point that the cruise ship staff had to bring a wheelchair, and they kept her confined to this small room and did not allow her to have any sort of visitors. An emergency call was put out at 11:30 p.m., but a search didn't start until 1 a.m., which, I mean, I think most of us would have some serious questions about. If they already knew that at 8:30 Ariel was gone and that she had gone overboard, whether it was intentional or accidental, why did they wait 5 entire hours to even begin searching for her? It's believed that Ariel went into the water at approximately 47 miles east of Fort Lauderdale. It's not like the boat stopped right then and there to look for her. They sailed for 2 additional hours, waiting until it was 100% confirmed that someone had indeed gone overboard. These 2 hours would have put them a very far distance from where she supposedly fell, not to mention the dangers lurking in the ocean below, the risk of her drowning or even hypothermia from the temperatures that drop overnight. And while I will acknowledge that the Coast Guard was able to get to the area and start searching first, it was still at only 1 a.m. It seems like the search being conducted 5 whole hours later was simply to save face and to say that they had at least tried to look for her. Later that night, Vera was then moved into a brand new cabin different from the one she was staying at. This new cabin did not have a balcony, even though Vera said that they had specifically chosen a room with a balcony. And then they locked her in there with security personnel standing outside of the room because she was deemed as being too risky. Now, she was barred to this room for the remainder of the cruise, and because Ariel had gone missing on the first day, that meant that she would need to spend the next 6 days in this room. Anytime she attempted to speak with higher authority, she was given the roundaround, which was completely typical. When the cruise finally came to an end, crew members were assigned to escort Vera off the ship to the airport, and she was even given a brand new flight, completely different from any of the other people that had been on the same tour as her. To her, it seemed like they were really trying their hardest to make sure that she was separated from the rest of the group to reduce the amount of information she could communicate to anyone else. It wasn't until after the cruise was over and after she had gotten home that she had learned that people from the group that she was on were told that Vera had decided to leave the cruise on her own, which was completely untrue. These people had no idea that she was essentially being locked up and held as a prisoner in one of these small, tiny cabins on the ship. Tragically, the body of her daughter was never found, and it seems like the circumstances point to this being some sort of freak accident, but there has been no further explanation as to what exactly happened. We don't know if she slipped. We don't know if she bumped into the railing. We don't know if she was intoxicated and accidentally fell over. But to this day, Ariel's mother believes that if the search for her had been taken seriously and had it been done much sooner, it's possible that Ariel would be with her today. Now, this next story is quite bizarre, and it is one of the stories that I found myself thinking about from time to time over the past few years, and that's mostly because the circumstances are really weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it makes me believe that there is more information than we are being told. And this is the story of a woman named Marion Carver. In August of 2004, Marion, a 40-year-old poet and investment banker, boarded a 7-day cruise that departed from Seattle heading to Alaska. She was a single mom to a 13-year-old daughter who was living with her ex-husband, her daughter's father. The couple divorced in 2000, and unfortunately, she lost custody of her daughter, and this was said to have taken a huge emotional toll on her. I mean, for any mother, this would be absolutely devastating. On the cruise, a steward was assigned to her cabin, just like on any other cruise. This is the person that's responsible for checking in on your room, for checking in on you, and sometimes they do this multiple times a day. Often enough, passengers become familiar with their steward. They often learn their names, they engage in small talk, so kind of knowing a little bit about the people that you're looking after becomes a normal thing. Marion's steward on this cruise was a man named Domingo Montero. He described her as being a very welcoming, relaxed woman, and she seemed really excited to be on the cruise. He noted that Marion did not have any suitcases with her, just 2 handbags. It appears that Marion didn't bring a lot of things with her, just her pair of shoes and a dress, essentially what she was wearing the day that she boarded the cruise ship. On the first night of the cruise, Marion spoke with Domingo and told him that she wanted to go upstairs, but she didn't really want to go to the dining room. The following night, she said the exact same thing to him, and this time he suggested that maybe she should just order room service, and so she agreed. He went off and he came back with 2 sandwiches for her. The next morning, on the 3rd day of the cruise, Domingo went to check in on Marion and her room, and that's when he noticed that her bed looked like no one had slept in it from the day before. He took a glance across the room and said that there was no sign of Marion anywhere. A few things did catch his attention, though. He said that there was a generous tip left behind, but there was also a manila envelope with something inside of it, and all of Marion's belongings were still in the cabin, including the only pair of shoes she brought with her. There was something really off about this, so much so that Domingo decided to report her as missing immediately to his supervisor. Now later, when this information was released, everyone was absolutely stunned at the reaction this supervisor had. When Domingo reported Marion as missing, he said that something just felt off. It was not adding up. His supervisor looks at him and tells him to just do his job and forget about it, completely dismissing Marion altogether. Not knowing what else to do, Domingo did continue with his job, but each passing day on the cruise, he continued to report Marion as missing. But even though Marion was missing for the next 5 days, nothing was done about her disappearance. At the end of the cruise, his supervisor told Domingo to box up Marion's belongings and to bring them to his office. This meant that no authority was ever able to search the cabin Marion was in. It was never sealed off. It had been contaminated by people coming and going. And if there were any evidence left behind, it had definitely been, again, contaminated or completely destroyed. The supervisor then ordered the clothing that Marion had left behind to be donated to a local charity, but he decided to take her personal belongings and put them in a locker that was in his office. And to make matters worse, at this point, no one decided that it was necessary to report Marion as missing, and we'll get into that a little bit later. This would have been incredibly easy to do. I mean, Marion left her handbags behind, and in those handbags were her wallets with her IDs. So if someone really wanted to report her as missing, it would have been really easy to do so with this information. They could have even potentially found a way to contact friends and family to let them know what was going on. Instead, it would take the cruise line 5 entire weeks to report Marion as missing, and that was only because her family had gotten involved. So at this point, they realized that they had no choice but to contact the FBI. So let's talk about her family. How did they realize that Marion was missing if no one ever reported her as missing? It was none other than her young 13-year-old daughter who raised alarm bells. She became very worried. Now, she was living with her father in the UK, so she would regularly talk to her mother on the phone. But when she wasn't able to reach her mother after multiple attempts, multiple days, she became very worried. So much so that she decided to call her grandfather, who was Marion's father, and his name was Kendall Carver. He also attempted to contact Marion multiple times, and when he wasn't able to do so either, at this point he decided to report his daughter as missing. It was only once the investigation had began that the family discovered that Marion had been on a cruise at all, let alone that she was going to be heading all the way up to Alaska. It was because of her financial records, her credit card statements, that they were able to confirm that she had bought the ticket for the cruise. Now, for most people, this sort of behavior would be really weird. I mean, from my perspective, if I was going to be traveling alone, I would at least want to tell someone that I trusted. It doesn't need to be everyone, but I would at least try to tell one person where I was going to be, what my plans were, just in case, because you never know what could potentially happen. But according to Marion's family, she was super independent. She was a free spirit. She had been known to take trips multiple times by herself without telling anyone when she just needed to clear her mind. Now, during the investigation, Kendall took it upon himself to get going, and he started by contacting the cruise line to confirm if Marion had gotten on the ship at all. It took them 3 days to get back to him, and by this point, she had been missing for 26 whole days. They were able to confirm that she had gotten on, but they had no way of knowing whether or not she had gotten off, or if she did, where she had gotten off. They explained that no one had reported her as missing and that her leaving her things behind would be considered as normal, as this sort of thing apparently happens often on cruise ships. They went on to explain that sometimes people just forget their things in their rooms. Sometimes people purposely leave things behind if they decide to get off at a different port and just restart their life. Sometimes they say that people switch cabins, or they find someone to, I guess, hook up with or spend time with on the boat, and then they forget their stuff behind at their original cabin after having moved to their new cabin. However, her father was completely unsatisfied with any of these explanations. I mean, none of them really made sense. He asked about the surveillance footage on the ship, and conveniently, they told him that the film was only saved for about 3 days after it was recorded. When he pressed about her steward, they refused to reveal Domingo's name. At this point, he had no idea what else to do, so he decided to hire a private investigator. Now, surprisingly, the cruise ship did allow the private investigator onto the ship, but he was very limited with the amount of time he had on the boat, and he was also prohibited from speaking to any of the staff, including security. He was able to confirm that Miriam's room was a short walk to the observation deck, which was about 100 feet above water, alluding to the idea that it would have been feasible for someone to push her over or for her to have jumped. However, I don't really see the correlation with the proximity of her room to the observation deck as being a deciding factor. I mean, if somebody had their room on the opposite end of the ship and they really wanted to jump off from that particular observation deck, they could just walk there at any point. There's nothing stopping them from getting there. So her room being close to the observation deck doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what happened. It was also revealed that Marian's SeaPass card, or the currency card that everyone is given on these cruise ships, was never used for the first 2 days that she was on the ship. Shortly after, Kendall then hired lawyers from both Massachusetts and Florida to take on his case against the cruise line. This resulted in crew members giving depositions where it was revealed that someone had in fact reported Marian as missing. However, during those depositions, what the supervisor had told Domingo was revealed and left everyone stunned. As a result, this man was fired and he was taken off the ship before the FBI could question him. But with his exit, also disappeared that manila envelope that Marian had left behind, including the belongings that were in his locker. So at this point, it's kind of easy to see that the cruise line is trying to cover up something, or at least contain the damage that had been done, since no one reported Marian as missing. Kendall realized this, and so he decided to file a lawsuit against them, which then led to further discoveries. So remember the security footage that they said only was recorded for 3 days before it was deleted? Well, that was not true. The truth is that this footage was saved for 30 days before it was deleted, which meant that when Kendall had initially inquired about it, they should have definitely still had it saved, because he inquired about it when Marian had been missing for 26 days. During the trial, the cruise line attempted to excuse what happened to Marian as her choosing to take her own life because she had a ton of emotional problems stemming from her divorce and her losing custody to her daughter. Although Marian did threaten to take her life in the past, her father says that she never acted on it. And Marian's father did explain that she did have some stressful periods in her life. It didn't really matter what he said because the cruise line used this information as ammunition to essentially back up their arguments that she must have been this distressed or depressed woman on a ship that didn't know what else to do, had lost control of her life, and ultimately chose to end it on the cruise by going overboard. They also suggested that the manila envelope left behind was likely some sort of goodbye letter, but because it had disappeared with the supervisor, we have no idea what was actually in it. But because Marian's clothing was found in the room, the idea that she decided to jump overboard was heavily questioned, because if she did decide to do this, that meant that she would have had to have done it either in her underwear or completely nude, which would have been something very odd to see. I mean, I haven't been on a cruise myself, so I don't know if there are many people running around nude or in their underwear. But if someone was running around like that and trying to jump off of the cruise, I think somebody would have noticed or would have remembered this happening. However, to this day, what happened to Marian Carver remains a complete mystery, and her father sadly did pass away without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. Okay, this next story is a little bit more recent, and it goes to 2023. It was Labor Day weekend of 2023 when Kevin McGrath, a 26-year-old father of two, vanished from a Carnival cruise ship. The trip departed from the port of Miami and was headed down to the Bahamas for the weekend. Kevin was on the cruise along with over 40 family members to celebrate his father's 60th birthday. What was supposed to be a memorable weekend and a milestone celebration turned into every parent's worst nightmare. Everything had gone well on the cruise up until the final day. His father said he last spoke to Kevin the night before at approximately 10 p.m. at his cabin. He said he had gone to give him his luggage tags, but to also confirm with him that everyone was going to be having breakfast together at approximately 7:30 a.m. the following morning. The next morning, Kevin's family gathered for breakfast as scheduled, but there was no sign of Kevin anywhere. According to his sister Danielle, who was not on the cruise, this was alarming, and so the entire family decided to start searching for Kevin themselves. And without any luck, they quickly decided to approach crew for help. And later that morning, Kevin was reported as missing. Now, during the investigation, it was revealed that the last time Kevin used his key card to enter his cabin room was at approximately 3:30 in the morning on Monday. Unfortunately, the key card does not advise when someone exits the room, so we have no idea when he left. I will note, though, that there are some reports that claim Kevin was last seen alive at 7 a.m. in his cabin by his cabin mate, which was reported as being his twin brother. He was last seen wearing a black shirt, black shorts, and gray shoes. Immediately, the questions began. Did Kevin go overboard? I mean, it is possible, but the ship did have new technology that detects if someone goes overboard, and none of it ever flagged. Since the ship was arriving back into Miami, the crew alerted the Miami-Dade police and the Coast Guard for assistance as they began their search that morning at 11 a.m. According to the Coast Guard, nearly 3,000 square nautical miles were searched with over 80 hours combined before they decided to suspend the search for Kevin, leaving his family absolutely devastated. And ever since that Labor Day weekend, there have been no new updates on what happened to Kevin. No one has any idea if he fell overboard accidentally. No one has any idea if there was foul play involved. It was quite literally as if he vanished into thin air. Our next disappearance revolves around a Canadian woman, and she was on a romantic cruise with her on and off again boyfriend. But in the middle of the night, she completely disappeared. And when her boyfriend was questioned, he was unable to provide any sort of explanation. Was he involved, or was he simply made out to be the bad guy due to a series of unfortunate events and circumstances? This is the strange disappearance of Fariba Amani. Fariba was a loving mother, daughter, sister, and friend with a heart of gold. Her family said that there was just no way they could describe how much of an amazing person she was, and so when they were notified that she had gone missing from a cruise in February 2012, they were devastated. On February 28, 2012, Fariba and her boyfriend, Ramiz Golshani, boarded a celebration cruise from Freeport, Bahamas to Palm Beach, Florida. She was a 47-year-old single mom with 2 adult children. She also was an esthetician with her own business while living in Vancouver, Canada. Several of her family members also lived in the same city, since being close was really important to all of them. It seemed like Fariba had it all. She had a lot going for her, except love. She really wanted a partner. So in 2011, she met a man named Ramiz Golshani at a salsa dance class. The pair quickly struck up a whirlwind romance, and within the first 6 months, it was said that they definitely indulged in their honeymoon phase. However, around Christmas of 2011, rumors began to swirl, and whisperings that Ramiz had been cheating on Fariba started to make their way to Fariba. He denied ever doing so, but the arguments increased, and so did the tension in the relationship. Unsure of what to make of it, Fariba decided to hire a private investigator to follow Ramiz to find out if he had actually been cheating on her or not. However, it seems like at the last minute, she decided to pull the plug and change her mind because she was too afraid of what he would say if he found out what she had done. After all, she had told her family that Ramiz was controlling, and he definitely would not be happy if he found out that she had hired a private investigator. Shortly after, Ramiz surprised Fariba with cruise tickets for a February 2012 cruise. It was supposed to be a romantic gesture, a special getaway for the two of them to reconnect. However, Fariba was unsure. She didn't even know if she wanted to go on the cruise at all. They were not in a really good place. She didn't even know if she wanted to continue with the relationship. But when she found out that the cruise tickets were non-refundable, she decided, why not? Let's just go, have fun. And she also wanted to use the cruise as a test to see how strong their relationship was after all. If the cruise didn't go well, she knew that she was going to break up with them when they had gotten back home. The couple boarded the cruise, excited for the trip ahead of them. Right before the ship set sail, Fariba's sister had sent her a text message, essentially just wishing her a good trip. Fariba responded by saying thank you, that she loved her, and that she would see her when she would get back, and that was the last time both of them spoke. Now, that evening, according to Ramiz, the couple snuggled into their cabin and watched a movie together. A little while later, around 1 a.m., Fariba mentioned she wanted to look at the duty-free shop. Ramiz, on the other hand, wanted to go to the casino, so the couple left their cabin but went their separate ways. Around 3 a.m., Ramiz then made his way back to the cabin, and this was later confirmed by his keycard. He noticed that Fariba was still not there, but he wasn't too worried. He figured that she was probably still enjoying her time out on the cruise. After all, there was quite a lot of entertainment on board. At 7 a.m. the next morning, when he woke up and Fariba was still not in the room, that's when he became worried. Worried enough that he decided to start searching for her throughout the entire ship. He went through the different decks, he went to the restaurants, he went back to the gift shop that she was at, but there was no sign of her anywhere. So at around 8 a.m., he decided to report her as missing. Now at this point, the cruise ship was approaching Palm Beach, and once it got there, the passengers disembarked and the crew did search the ship for Fariba, but there was no sign of her. The ship then contacted the Coast Guard for further assistance, but still there was no sign of Fariba at sea either. Ramiz was interviewed and questioned about what happened that night, which is why we know the events that led up to her disappearance. And although authorities wanted to make him their main suspect, there was nothing to tie him to this. Video footage confirmed that he was at the casino until 3 a.m., and his keycard registered him entering his room shortly after. The worst thing they discovered about him were the affairs that he was having. Authorities went back to visit the duty-free shop where Fariba said she wanted to go, and they asked the attendant if they had seen her. Unfortunately, the attendant could not recall seeing Fariba there, but he said that they did know that she didn't buy anything. This was also later confirmed when they looked into her CPAS card and they didn't find any transactions. A huge search was done for her across 10,000 square miles during 84 hours, but nothing turned up. Shortly after, Ramiz was cleared as a suspect by the FBI, although some claim that he knows more than what he's saying. This left Fariba's family with few possibilities. Is it possible that she accidentally fell off the board while intoxicated, or even just plain accidentally without any alcohol? Her family claims that this could be possible, but it's very unlikely because Fariba did not drink alcohol. Is it possible that she met with foul play from another passenger or a crew member? Again, anything is possible, but there was never any evidence that pointed in this direction. To everyone that was searching for Fariba, it really did seem like she just disappeared into thin air. They had no way to explain what had happened to her. And since then, there have been no new updates about what happened to Fariba. Ramiz has always claimed his innocence and states that he too also lost a loved one that day. And as for family, they remain hopeful that someday they will get the answers that they have been looking for all these years. It's hard to imagine that a promise of fun in the sun would lead to such devastation, loss, and trauma for some people. These disappearances remind us that the ocean hides more than its depths. It hides secrets, silence, and sometimes even crimes that go unanswered. For loved ones left behind, the pain isn't just in the loss, it's in the not knowing. Until justice is pursued and accountability is demanded, cruise ships will remain not just floating cities of leisure, but vessels of mystery and heartbreak. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. I'm going to put some contact information in the description boxes if you have any information on any of the individuals that were mentioned in today's video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.